All right, so I just unmuted myself. Can I get a thumbs up, or if someone can just let me know in the chat box? You may not realize this, but there is a chat box. Nobody will be on video here, so which is kind of nice about these webinars. Is really I'm the only one on video, and it doesn't bother me at all because I've done it for so long. So if you can give me a thumbs up or a wave, or just tell me that you're here in that little chat box on the bottom, that would be lovely. Or I will have to oh no, I can tell I'm going. Okay, well, welcome. I'm not gonna sit around and really wait for a long time. I believe that everyone's time is precious, and that we really do need to respect everyone's time. So we're gonna dive right in, because again, I have a lot of content just to barrel out here. And the idea with these webinars is that they don't last 5 million hours. So we are going to barrel out this content, hopefully within 30-ish minutes, 40 minutes max, and then give a little bit of time for question and answers if there are some. And then you guys will catch an email with the replay tomorrow. And yeah, you guys can have some empowerment in understanding cognitive function and using multiple different tools, from nutrition to essential oils, on how to master this part of your body. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen and make sure I have the right screen. There we go. And I'm just going to make my presentation bigger. So just bear with me here. Here we go. You know, the bar that you want to use is always right in the way. There we go. All right. Present. All right. So here we are with Train Your Brain Cognitive Impact. You're going to see a lot of content in here, so if at any time you do need to go back to it, that's totally fine. The slides are made to be really focused on a lot in short spurts, so hopefully it's not too much. If it is, always make sure to reach out. I have no problems having open dialogue with people. We'll start off with telling you who I am. So most of you guys know me, but those of you who don't, my name is Natalie Pelto. I am certified in multiple specialties, from nutritional therapy to Reiki to being in healthcare and radiography, doing multiple specialties there for the last 20 years. So if you do want to connect with me outside of here, there are multiple places that I spend my time, specifically on social media, giving out tons of free education, specifically Instagram or Facebook in my personal group, and in Instagram under Essential Modern Day Healers, which is the name of my company. Also, you can find me and my School for Conscious Living at the website just down below, which I started about a year ago with great success. So, as much as I love Canva. All right, so my story in under a minute. So many people know my story, but to let you guys know, in a quick nutshell, my son at a very young age was almost diagnosed with autism, completely nonverbal, unable to make eye contact or communicate or connect with anyone. And it was really heart-wrenching for me. And having a very long-standing Western healthcare background, I realized very quickly that Western healthcare was not going to help me here. And so I started to venture in other therapies. I started to venture in the other world of functional health, which I never pictured myself being. And this was like 8 to 9 years ago. So, you know, backtracking, and honestly, it was probably the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me, because right now to this day, we've gone through probably what, 8 years? No, more than that even. Probably about 10 years now, but my son has been considered autism free for good 3-4 years now. And so we are privileged to have, you know, just a very active social connecting child. And a lot of that had to do with cognitive function, which is why I'm very passionate about this class or this webinar, and I love to teach people how to master and impact their cognitive function. Now, I'm going to dive into a little bit about this. We're done with my story, but I want to talk just briefly about how cognitive function can impact multiple different age groups, okay, and what it looks like for impairment. So impairment meaning that their cognitive function is working very well. So in young children, then this can look or manifest in a way that is learning disabilities, inability to stay at attention. We know many conditions such as ADD and ADHD, opposition, frustration, which now they've termed ODD, right? They've created all of these new terminology that we didn't have so much before, to create this umbrella of conditions to help support parents in understanding the avenues and therapies that they can use for their children after. But now saying that there is so much more empowering things that people can be doing at home that is just really starting to get to the surface in the areas of epigenetics and understanding the genome. But we're going to keep on moving now to in adults. So cognitive impairment for adults doesn't always look like what we expect it to. Cognitive impairment for an adult, cognitive impairment for an adult can actually look really like brain fog, or the inability to focus and concentrate, suddenly becoming losing track of their thought. Like, you walk into a room and forget what you got, or what you were there for. Some people call it mom brain. There are so many other things, but it can look a little different because adults tend to run on a very quick or very specific train of thought and habitual building. So when we're looking at cognitive impairments, when those things, those habit building skills that they've already had for a long time, start to become affected. And in the elderly, this can look like Alzheimer's, dementias, multiple different types. And, really, if we look at the statistics of what they've discovered, and that 1%, only 1% of people have that predisposition to have dementia or Alzheimer's, that is staggering to look at our communities, our elderly population, and to see that is what the statistics are. Only 1% are predisposed at birth to have that as when they get older. So that means that 99% of that would be from an outside source or environmental or epigenetic triggers. I'm going to touch briefly on epigenetics right now, just because it is really new studies. Some people have never heard of it. If you type it in Google, you will notice that it is not even considered a word because it has not been added to the dictionary yet, I guess. So epigenetics is the new study. So in 2002, they completed the study of the genome, which means our genetic material, which we have, right? We get genetic material from our parents. And so we get some Y and some Z, and we get all of this genetic stuff inside of us that does not generally change. We do have genetic predisposition to things. But what that really looks like, so what epigenetics are, is they discover that on our genome, like on our strands of DNA, there were switches, and they're called methylation switches, and they can be impacted by our environment. So and it's very interesting because they can be so impacted by our environment that there are people whose eye colors are changing. There are people who are having massive changes in their health, just things that they would have never expected. Now, how did they even prove that these existed? Actually, it was mostly proven through a study of twins that were born, identical twins that were born and separated at birth. And some of these twins, when they were later found, they were completely different in some ways, completely the same in others, but there were some of them that looked completely different, but yet they started out with the same genetic material. And I'm talking like literally identical twins. And so what they discovered was that their environment impacted their genome to the point where it looked completely different, and different parts of it was active and different parts of it were not. So why am I even telling you this? Because it has a direct impact on cognitive function. So starting off with the microbiome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the microbiome. It is one of my favorite topics. I have an entire masterclass about the microbiome, so this will not be all about the microbiome. But what is it made of? And why is it so important? Well, the microbiome is basically a combination of viruses, fungi, and bacteria, both good and bad, that we generally think we find in our bowel system. which we have now deemed the second brain for a very good reason. So I'm going to touch on that. The cool fact is that our gut is actually not the only part of our body that has the microbiome. So it's literally on us and in us everywhere. There are more of them, trillions of them, and studies are now showing that it's not exactly that there are more of them. It's just that there are equal parts of them than there are of us cellularly. And so that means that we have literally an entire ecosystem on and in our bodies. Now, we're going to touch a little bit about this because I talk about it so much, but I never really showed a visual on why it's so important to have the microbiome and to treat it really well, like the ecosystem it should be treated, because it has a direct impact on how we think and how clearly our bodies function. So in our microbiome, where all these good bacteria and viruses reside, we have, and specifically in our stomach, there are these beautiful, beautiful little ridges called villi. Now these villi right here are able to absorb nutrients that we need. And our cognitive function, our brain actually needs nutrients, very specific types of nutrients to function effectively. I'll give you an example of this because I am certified in nutritional therapy, and there are many of the questions in which that we ask that when we're looking at examples, brain fog, dizziness, poor concentration, mental wellness issues, that they're all linked to very specific types of nutritional deficiencies. For example, some of them are B vitamins, some of them are omegas. You know, fatty acids are extremely supportive to the brain functioning effectively and efficiently. So and in order to get these things to your brain, they start in the gut, because what we eat is literally what we are. And so when we ingest, for example, omega fatty acids from, let's just say, a lovely piece of salmon or a piece of fish, then we have this villi, all of these little guys here, that actually just kind of wave, the food goes across and it absorbs, these little ridges absorb. And so what happens though, when we have a depletion in our microbiome, is that these become very spread out. And so this being our gut lining, it actually becomes to have holes in it. And what I mean by holes in it is not directly like big holes. It has spaces in between the villi, which means there's less absorption of those wonderful nutrients that need to go promote cognitive function. In Alzheimer's and beginning stages of dementia, I watched this wonderful webinar with many very, very renowned doctors that have studied the microbiome, very legit doctors. They had a huge talk about how it's so we need to really start touching base on this and how important this creates health everywhere in the body. And I believe it's called the Interconnected series. So if you ever want to have some great education, go ahead and hop into the Interconnected series. I think you can still find them on Instagram or on Facebook. They have lots of information specifically on the microbiome. So what does it do? Well, scientists and studies are beginning to show that the microbiome has more functions for us than we used to think. So the microbiome is what will delegate if certain medications will work for you or not, which is kind of interesting because oftentimes when we take something in, we assume that the human body does the action of, delegating where it goes, but actually it's not always the case. Surprisingly, the microbiome, because of the ecosystem that it is, it actually, what we used to think was our own function as a human being, has now been discovered that is actually the function of these tiny bacteria, viruses, and fungi that are trying to help us and coexist with us in a very interesting way. Now, what does it do and why is this so important? Well, it helps to maintain proper digestion. That's the obvious because it's mostly in our belly. Cognitive health, this is its next. So our gut, which is deemed the second brain, is directly linked to our brain through a very large nerve called the vagus nerve. And so when there is inflammation in the gut, where 75% of the population today has inflammation in the gut, it can travel up and cause inflammation in the brain very easily. In young children, it's actually seen much more. So in young children, that vagus nerve is very open. It is no surprise that we are in a time where our youngest children in school are having the most difficulty with learning disabilities. And I'm not just saying like autism or specific set condition, but we're seeing more and more learning disabilities, developmental delays. And a lot of that has very much so to do with our environment. Okay, absorption of nutrients, which literally is what makes us work. Immunity, and immunity right now is a really hot topic if we think about where we are in the world today. Sorry, I'm just looking at my time, making sure I stay on target here. Skin issues, eczemas. A lot of people don't realize eczemas has kind of made it into the autoimmune condition. And that is directly impacted by stress or the gut, both be mostly the gut, but stress also can trigger eczemas. Muscle recovery, joint health, and in a nutshell, it's our best defense against chronic illness, cancers, autoimmune disease, and neurological disease. So that was a lot to say. So let's talk a little bit. I already talked briefly on this, what happens when it's damaged. Well, we have this term now that is called leaky gut. It's a layman's term. You're not going to find it in any medical dictionaries. What we call is a depletion of the microbiome, which is basically die-off of our good cells and bacterias. And what happens when it's damaged? Well, it's actually allows for toxicity. So I'm going to talk briefly about neurotoxicity in just a second. You're going to see my next slide. But when we have those spaces in those villi, so this is how, let's just say these are rows and rows of what it should look like. When there are spaces that happen in between them, usually, first of all, it means that there isn't a lot of movement happening with our food. So, you know, constipation, diarrheas are very, very common, especially with people. And if you look, if you look at what's happening in the world, that is the trend. Most autistic kids have bad bowel patterns. People who have dementia, bad bowel patterns. Adults that have constant headaches or cognitive impairments, they generally have bad bowel patterns. And so this is, when we see trends, we need to start as a collective, and we are in a time of collective consumerism where we're always distracted, that we're not even listening to our own bodies and our own voices. We need to slow down and start to just become aware of what our body is trying to tell us. The planet is also doing the same thing. How we treat ourselves kind of manifests out in how we treat the planet. And we are a very, very good depiction of what we're living in our world today. So cognitive function wise, what happens when we get those spread outs is that there is absorption. So when there's, for example, if someone is has a blockage, and I'm not even a blockage, if they're not only going to the washroom, let's just say once every day or once every 3 days, once a week, then what happens to that matter that should be coming out every day? When the gut lining gets so damaged that there are holes like that, then there is a reabsorption of toxic material, specifically some of the ones we don't want, because the job of our bowels is to release the things that do not serve us anymore. And unfortunately, if we're holding on to the things that do not serve us anymore, it has the ability to reabsorb and cause some havoc. So let's us explore neurotoxicity a little bit more, okay? Okay, so I want to talk about how much we're exposed to neurotoxins in our day. It is not like one ginormous thing that creates neurotoxicity. And I didn't even put vaccines in here because vaccines is such a hot topic right now that I didn't, but vaccines would be in here otherwise because of the preservatives that they use are generally in some form or other heavy metal based. Heavy metal has this way of depositing in the brain and causing a lot of issues, because not only is it residing in the brain and taking its time there and creating havoc and brain fog and impairment and learning disabilities, it's really hard to get rid of. And so I'm going to go through each of these very quickly, and this is not a judge, and I want you to take inventory, but not a judge. This is a judge-free zone, because you may be exposing yourself to this often enough and maybe just didn't know or don't care. But either way, now you have it out in the open and I'm going to share it. So piping in your homes is a very, very huge area of possible lead exposure depending on your piping, copper exposures. At no point, even though many of the tools that we use in our homes that are of natural substances, at no point was it ever made supposed to be in our world that we would be exposed to massive amounts of heavy metals. And micro amounts of metals is fine. They are occurring in rocks and natural parts of the world. But for us to constantly be ingesting and putting things in our mouths and putting it on our skin, putting it in our food, and I'm going to talk about that now. For example, you know, I put like a burger here, and I used a generic burger, so I'm not going to talk about any specific companies. But just note that the bun on this burger is likely a commercial bun. It's likely coming, it probably doesn't have any sugar in it. It is probably from, it probably is using high fructose corn syrup, and high fructose corn syrup has usually about 70% of the high fructose corn syrup in the world. The corn is actually dipped in a mercury, a food grade mercury solution to preserve it for us to be able to ingest it. It's no surprise that certain companies' burgers never go bad for like 20 years. People, I see pictures of it all the time on Facebook. The burger I bought from so-and-so place 20 years ago, and it still looks perfect. That's a little bit worrisome. That's like something that you obviously probably can't digest very well. But high fructose corn syrup and having that mercury base is actually can get absorbed into your brain. Now, what's really interesting about mercury is that it's one of the worst neurotoxins there are, and it also is extremely difficult to get rid of. Most mercury exposures take at least a half-life of 30 years. So it has a half-life of 30 years. So if you're not actively trying to get rid of it, it is actually only removing itself or being detoxified by your body every 30 years. And so we have to look at that. And there are ways to detoxify heavy metals. I'm not going to be diving right into too much of that just yet. But just note that this is just something we have been taught to enjoy, and that it's, you know, it's a treat to have it, and we should eat it more. Right? We have commercials for burgers like this all the time. And it's marketed towards us, our children, and to very, very smartly created marketing to the people who have the most influence on either their parents. There is so much marketing that goes around things like this. Okay, so this covered high fructose corn syrup. It also covered the burger and a place where you can find it. Cutlery, guys. I know it seems like such an odd place for me to go, but cutlery itself is metal. You poke it in your food. You're constantly shoving it in your mouth. The jewelry we wear, the rings we wear. Do you see how it's not just one area that we're being consistently exposed? It's exposed in a large dose. It's consistent small exposures. Our makeup that we put on our skin, minerals, right? We hear minerals all the time. And then we also have neurotoxins that are heavy metals being one of the most that give havoc. I'm not even going to tell you, this isn't even touching the surface of an iceberg. For example, there's toothpaste, there's underarm deodorants, there's creams. Do you see that these are things that we are just used to using? And if you shop at Walmart, if you live in a town like I do, and there's not much else, there's not very many other places to go, you know that you're being exposed to a lot more. Okay. Lastly, for our young children who are suffering from all of these learning disabilities, it's very frustrating that, and even though I do have Fruit Loops, and I know that Fruit Loops has changed their flavoring or their colorant to more natural substances, they hadn't always. So I'm just using this image as to show how much our children are being exposed to birthday cakes, bars, ice creams, all of these things that we just don't even realize, juices. So specifically, this is really important to understand in neurotoxicity when we're talking about food colorings. Having one food coloring is extremely toxic and could cause extreme hyperactiveness, extreme, just very behavioral issues in both adults and children. So we're not just going to focus on just adults here or children. But the problem with it is, it isn't just, when you get exposed to one, it's bad, especially red seems to be the one. Get exposed to two though, it's actually, the combination creates a reaction in the brain that is almost like 3 times the exposure. It actually makes it like a trifold of being worse. And when I was doing my detox program, they really touched base on food colorants and how its implementations or implications in the brain. And it is very scary that when you mix certain colors together, you actually end up with not just twice the amount of toxicity, but 3 times. I believe blue and red are considered one of the worst. And this is what most of our children are attracted. We are attracted to eat in color. I want to give you guys a little piece of advice. So there's a reason why we're attracted to eat in color. We are not attracted to eat, and this is how smart chemists are that create these foods, such as cereals and bars. And you'll notice that children are extremely attracted to color of their foods, because as humans, we actually see more of the color spectrum than many carnivores, because we are made to look for fruits and vegetables. We are made to find those in nature. We were given a gift to see better so that we could be, you know, herbivores or omnivores or whatnot. So we are meant to look for those things, and our children are being exploited, and our parents are being, and our elderly are being exploited by being marketed very bright foods that are filled with food colorants. So just to become a little bit more hyper aware of this, and just to be conscious maybe of the foods that you're eating, you would be so surprised when you look at the back of those ingredients and how many foods have colorants that really don't even need them. Okay, so I spend a little bit of time here because this is not a subject I talk about as much, and it's definitely worth sharing. All right, so how can we, oh, I think I have some people in my chat. I'm not sure, I'll have to look after. Okay, so how can we strengthen our relationship with our microbiome? So this is, if you have the replay for this, when you do, if you've already heard me talk about all the rest, really dive into this specific protocol, okay? So this is strengthening, this is basically a cognitive function protocol. We're gonna dive into the oil soon. So first off, you're gonna remove inflammatory foods, specifically dairy, meats, and GMO, corn, and gluten. These, you can still have bread. Yes, I was nice, like you can still have bread. You just wanna make sure that they're from trusted sources, and that they are organic, or that they are, you know, just really, really high quality, and you know, or you're making them at home. Again, this is another really important tool. You can make your bread at home, but if you're getting your flour from the commercial goods and it has, I forgot what they name it, but it's actually metal. So they actually put metal in your flours, your white flours. So just be conscious of that as well. Like, look at the ingredients, and I'll try to remember and post it after. But one of the ingredients in white flour is actually, as a preservative, is a heavy metal. So just to be conscious of that. Sometimes we think we're doing good by doing the extra work and making things from scratch and using less ingredients. It doesn't always mean that those ingredients that we're using are made from a integrity source company. All right, so learn your nutritional deficiencies. That's what I do, guys. So I have started taking on clients again, only virtually for now. So if you're interested in working with me to learn this, nutritional deficiencies is literally what is feeding your brain. So, sorry, nutrition and nutrients, vitamins, minerals, those are the things that are feeding us, creating, you know, homeostasis, allowing for us to function at our optimum. So if you're interested in that, make sure to reach out. Eat a variety of polyphenols and phytonutrients. That's a lot of big words. Eat the color of the rainbow. There's an image I put here for a very specific reason, because it has multiple colors. I posted in Instagram, as an example, a picture of my salad, okay? And a lot of people don't like salad. But what I posted, the caption was, it was a question, how many people love colorful food? I had never had so many responses that were unanimous in a yes than any other post or question I had ever asked. So each phytonutrients and polyphenol, each phytonutrient has different colors. And it's very specific, and each color sometimes has a multitude of phytonutrients. And these act as like a little stressor in the body, the cellular structure, to make it work a certain way, to kind of create a response that we need. So very important to eat the color of the rainbow. So to make it not complicated, I can use big words all I want, but really bridging, there's no point in using really big terminology when we're trying to bridge into everyone understanding and eating properly for themselves is eating the colors of the rainbow. So if you can, there are Google Sheets you can get now that will literally like a weekly sheet. You can probably even get some that are digital for those of you who want to be better for the environment, but you can like check mark that you've had all your phytonutrients for the day. So you've had one of each color being blue, red, orange, yellow, white. So there's, you know, there is just, it's so easy. Just put the good foods in there in different colors. And then incorporating a good quality multi-strain probiotic, not from the grocery store. Well, I shouldn't say that. There may be some really great grocery stores out there, but for the most part, commercial or large chain grocery stores do not carry the right probiotics to help you. They can mass produce certain probiotics that are inexpensive and they still charge way more than they should for them. But a high quality probiotic, Doterra has an excellent one because it's double encapsulated. Dr. Marsola BioCult from Natasha Campbell McBride. So those are all wonderful, wonderful probiotics if you're someone who suffers from cognitive impairment or headaches. They're both kind of often linked. Okay, and then eat prebiotic foods. So prebiotic, probiotic, what's the difference? So there is just a minor difference. One is the food, one is the bacteria. So first off, I'll say that probiotics generally do not remain in your body. They're just there to create an environment for your own good bacteria to proliferate, which means to grow. But it can't grow without food, just like we can't function without food. It's the same deal. So prebiotic foods are foods that actually feed probiotics. Now, I want to talk a little bit briefly about phytonutrients as well. In that sense, is that our microbiome, some of the foods that are the toughest for us to eat often feed the microbiome rather than us. Our good bacteria, fungi, and viruses sometimes thrive from eating a lot of different colored foods. And sometimes we think it's because it's making us feel better, but it's actually making our ecosystem feel so good that in turn, it allows us and lets us feel better as well. So that's why it's such a bridge and important thing. Okay, the best thing to do here is supplement omegas. So either eating one red fish and a little bit of seafood. Always stay within the guidelines, guys. There's a reason that they're there. There's lots of mercury in our oceans these days. And then reducing the exposure to fragrance that are toxic, start using non-toxic skin products and removing toxic cleaners, basically anything that's going to damage the microbiome. That's what we're looking at and to reduce. Feel free to come back to this slide. Bringing bone broth as well into your life if you are not like myself and going into, actually I can still do bone broth, I shouldn't say that. Bone broth is an amazing tool to help the microbiome because first of all, the bones that you use would be of high quality and high nutrient dense, but also they would actually allow for a slippery, the fat in the bone broth allows to bind to toxicity and help it come out of you. And let's chat oil. So again, this is a really, really quick introduction. So this is more of an advanced for people. This is not an introductory essential oil class. We're not going to be doing the basics here at all. So we're diving right in. So how to use them really quick. And I'm going to even talk about specifically in this area, how to use the ones that are going to create cognitive function, cognitive impact, sorry. So rosemary. So the olfactory and topically are going to be probably the most efficient for quick acting cognitive impact. So what that means is our reptilian brain, our central brain, the brain that actually is stimulated by memory and habitual building and that can control like our blood pressure and so many other things, actually is our olfactory because it's directly linked to the limbic system. I said that. Yes, so when you smell an oil, it actually goes like, computer, can you work and do this? You need to do this action. So certain essential oils, certain herbs or plants will create an impact at our brains doing a certain thing. So for example, rosemary and the NCBI has been known to create a really, really positive impact in the brain for memory. So for people who struggle with remembering things, people who struggle with walking into a room that they may not have remembered what they were getting, very, very, very powerful oil. So the way that I prefer to use rosemary, I'm going to give you guys a full breakdown here on the next slide of what a cognitive, if you are suffering from cognitive impairment or know someone who does, children, adults, or elderly, the next slide is going to have an exact specific protocol to help support them. But smelling just rosemary, if you're someone who is kind of struggling, you're about to do a project, you're going in for an exam, you need to remember something for a webinar like this. Having a little bit of rosemary rubbed in your palms and peppermint while you're studying, right before or in a diffuser, which is part of the program I'm about to show, super powerful at creating it can extend your memory, or it can create a positive impact in the memory area of your brain by up to 70%, and that was just with the herb. So remember that essential oils, and if you don't know about essential oils, specifically doTERRA essential oils, are 50 to 70 times more potent than a herb. So that is huge, and always only use a trusted essential oil. I speak about doTERRA because doTERRA is the only ones that I have known to be so transparent and have the highest integrity with the testing of the oils and with how they impact the world, which is huge for me. Topically, when we use essential oils, so when we're using essential oils topically for cognitive impact, we want to be trying to get the oils closest to the brain. So for example, the best place is actually to rub along the back of the neck, along the spine, because that's where you have a hold here. It's called the occipital hole. And that's where your axis and your spine, your cervical spine actually connects to but it gives you access. So it's probably the easiest absorption area for that. You can use your temples, and you can use pretty much here at the top. The reasons that I would recommend the back of the neck, first of all, you're not going to get that full smell. You're away from the eyes, which is a big deal with essential oil, specifically peppermint. But it's going to have a very cooling and really quick effect because it has the ability to go, run through the entire spine. It's absorbed into your skin within about 20 seconds. And, it's in every cell in your body within about 20 minutes. But when you put it in the area that it needs to be the most, it's quicker and faster acting. And lastly, I'm trying to barrel through here. Lastly, we're going to talk about internally. Internally, I strongly suggest, again, with the nutritional deficiencies, if you're someone who does not eat on point all the time, or you don't know your nutritional deficiencies, it's a great place to start with doTERRA supplements because they were made, and it's still to this day, being a nutritional therapist, I haven't found a supplement that's quite like this and that's had this much impact, and what's in it is it's phenomenal. So the combination is made to work together, and no fairy dusting. What's great about this supplement is that it has all the nutrients that you should be using, and it's at a fraction of the price. I go to people's homes, or I have people come into my office, and they tell me they've got this is what I'm taking, and they have walls full of different types of nutrients. And this is a way for people to get all of them all in a very, very well created combination that's supportive to brain and health, especially the omegas here. Those are crucial to cognitive impact. All right. So I want to spend just a minute here because I want to let you guys kind of mull this over, think about it, maybe take a screenshot of it if you are not going to be watching the replay. The cognitive enhancement protocol, or AKA the cognitive impact protocol, only to be done with doTERRA products to ensure safety. Many other products, remember, we're trying to stay away from things like scent, and we're trying to stay away from things like fragrances and fake things that are going to cause more havoc in the body than do good. I know doTERRA's oils. I have been to multiple conventions. I have seen, you can look at each bottle and see how it tested. That to me, by an outside company, that to me is everything. And so using those oils is really important. Okay, so morning, it's 2 drops of frankincense and 1 copaiba soft gel. So 2 drops of frankincense under the tongue. The reason I like it under the tongue is that I work in healthcare and I can't smell like oils. If you're able to, you can always rub it on the back of your neck, but for consistency's sake, I like 2 drops of frankincense under the tongue, 1 drop copaiba soft gel, 1 dose of LLV, rub brain train roller on the back of neck. You are going to see it on the next slide. Diffuse either motivate or peppermint, or sorry, diffuse either motivate or peppermint and wild orange combo and eat a healthy diet for breakfast. This is the morning. I'm keeping it simple, okay? This is a very, very easy to follow routine. Now at around lunchtime, you wanna add your second dose of LLV with your food. You wanna rub your brain train roller on the back of your neck and across your shoulders. And at this time, if you are somewhere that allows diffusion, or if you are, or when you get home, you wanna be diffusing 2 drops each of rosemary, copaiba, wild orange, and peppermint combo. This is like, to me, the best thing that you could use for anything that you want to have your attention and remember. Eat a healthy lunch and then no caffeine afternoon. And I'm going to say why in a second. All right, evening, PB Assist, rub copaiba, frank into shoulders and spine. Not only will it allow you to have better cognitive impact or function, it's also going to really release tension that is going to impede blood flow into that area. So really focus on that. Electronics done at least 1 hour prior to bed. I would say even earlier, but I know that this isn't the reality of our Western culture. 1 hour prior to bed, no stimulants in room, and a solid 7+ hours of sleep each night. Even just having 6 hours of sleep can make people act like they're drunk. And I know that that's saying, I know that a lot of people can stop, they say, oh, I can sleep like 4 hours, or I can sleep for, you know, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I was that person. I can tell you that it has such an impact on cognitive function long-term, especially with dementias and Alzheimer's. Sleep is crucial. Creating proper routines around sleep is extremely important. I might do an entire sleep webinar just because it is so important, and how to access better sleep habits and patterns. All right, here we are towards the end. So this is the brain train roller bottle recipe, and it's probably one that's been created. I'm sure there's like a million people who use this, but this is my creation that I have used. It's 10 drops of frankincense, 10 drops of copaiba, 10 drops of melissa. If you cannot, if melissa is out of your budget, then go ahead. Bergamot is another wonderful cognitive enhancement and calmative at the same time. 10 drops of peppermint as a stimulant, and it's very calming to the neuro system. 15 of rosemary, I love rosemary for cognitive function. 10 drops of wild orange for also cognitive function and serotonin and detoxification. Topped with FCO, so fractionated coconut oil, and used 3 times daily along the neck and shoulders. This roller bottle is amazing. So very easy to use. You can use it on this recipe for any this is an adult version of the recipe. Children 3 and up, you would cut it by half, okay, for sure. And then for little babies, you probably wouldn't even be worried about this. You're letting them grow. Hopefully just focusing on the nutritional components of it. And yeah, enjoy this free rollerball recipe that I just gave you guys. And if you need doTERRA, if you are new to doTERRA or you have never heard of essential oils and this protocol really sounds like it's for you, I have really simplified ordering because it used to be such a hassle. Just call or text me, write down my number or my email, and just make sure that when you message me and you're like, yes, I would like to get started, either you can schedule a call with me, or we can just really get your order together, and I can just, if I have your email, I can email it back with a very, very secure link right through doTERRA's website, and you can just be like, yes, I want to pay for that, thank you. So we've made this much easier, so just make sure that you have my phone number or my email. I wanted to give one last little bonus here that we won't really have time to share because I'm gonna stop sharing my screen in a minute and we can have a chat for questions. But I did give you my gut healing crispy sauerkraut recipe right here. Super simple, minimal ingredients, and my bone broth recipe, which is again, very simple and very few ingredients. So have a look, watch it on the replay, pause it, take a screenshot, and yeah, and then just make it. It's great. These are wonderful. We use the bone broth specifically, and the sauerkraut were some of the things that my son was really, really into and still enjoys to this day. And then if you ever want to collaborate on your health, feel free to reach out to me about all of the programs that I offer. I have opened up an entire practice again. I had it closed for a while, and with COVID happening, it just felt like the right time. So I've reopened a 4-week mentoring container for nutritional therapy and NLP blend, which is neuro-linguistics programming, because like anything else, how we speak to ourselves is how we have success. So it's kind of a blended need. And so that has just kind of launched. I'm only accepting a very minimal amount of clients due to time constraints. I have a new course coming that is almost complete, called the Heal Thyself Self-Study Program. It also, for the first 20 people who sign up for it, will include a strategy healing session intake that's 90 minutes with me. And then my best value product is actually my School for Conscious Living membership that people are able to hop into. Specifically, those in my essential oil community get it for half price, but those are able to hop into it for $15 US, which is less than a yoga class in Canada. And I also always offer sliding scale payments for those who this really calls to their heart and they really do feel that they want to partake in this, and none of these options seem like it's feasible money-wise. The idea and intention is to heal our collective, so we make things work. So reach out if that is you. I want to thank you for showing up to the webinar. I made it in almost 45 minutes, which I think is great. I'm going to minimize my screen here, and I'm going to just see if there's any questions. And oh, I can't even open it. Most people are obviously going to catch the replay, which is totally fine. I just need to stop sharing. Perfect. Any questions? So if there are no questions, I am going to let everyone go. I want to thank you so much for honoring me with your time. Time is the most valuable commodity that we have, and I'm so honored that you allowed me to share my knowledge with you so that you could hopefully, use some of it, and hopefully it served you in any way that it could. Have a great day.